Now, where did I put it? Here it is. Welcome to the toolbox, where we discuss the tools we utilize every day. Yours to use or toss. It's up to you. But I hope you enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome to Tools for the Toolbox. I am Chance Burles, as you know, and I am super excited about today. I have someone from over the pond today, and we're going to be talking about some really cool stuff. So I'm going to jump into this as I always do with, who are you and what is your military background?
My name's Cullen. I'm a former Royal Marines Commando, sort of former. I'm still hanging around the reserves as they keep me in. I done 30 years regular service as a Royal Marines Commando, and lucky enough, most of that was in the Commando role. And then I had a bit of an epiphany and decided that I wasn't doing what I joined up to do, so I became an actor. So now I'm a professional actor, trained as an actor, and you know, that's the next adventure. And like we were speaking earlier on as well, Chance, failing as cheerfully and as bestfully as I can, waiting for the next challenge. And there's always something on the horizon.
You know, that it's such a great mentality to have, to just be like, let's see what's over the hill, man. And just see what happens. How long you been acting now?
I started my training in 2015, and it was literally, you know, out of one door into university. But I had a good shout from my partner, my Bezzy op, or my best friend, my wife, and she said, "Why don't you join the reserves?" And I'm going, "Well, hold on a second. I've left. I've done the 30 years. I've done my time. New adventure." And she went, "No. I think before you go to university, I think you should why don't you do that seamless transfer?" So I didn't actually leave the Marines. I just transferred into the reserve forces, and with that, I think it was probably the best information I could have got at that stage of my life, because as soon as I went to university, brilliant, bursting with enthusiasm, ready for action to become an actor. Went through all the audition process, got myself a place on the acting course. And I realized that all of a sudden there's me, a 47-year-old, with young 18 to, I think the oldest age bar me was 23, who was a mature student, and all these young people are 18. I was like, well, actually, you ain't that far yourself. But and it's not, that moving back into, dealing with young people, as we do in the forces anyway, but moving back into that environment, I realized that everything you said, the challenges that they face, and we all face when we're that age, aren't exactly the challenges that I'd overcome or been through. So I realized that falling out with boyfriends and, that sort of trauma, or having hang-ups with parents at home, I've moved considerably on from there, which is brilliant. And they have the right and the passage to move on in life. And it was good to observe and spectate, but really I could only sort of submerge myself into the training was when we were acting. Outside and socially, it wasn't that great fun. So being able to sort of like bomb burst out of that, go and chew the fat with some grizzly old honking Marines it was quite good, actually. And it's sort of like, it was good. It's good for that transformation. I think that's the important thing, because when you leave the armed forces, wherever you're from, especially from the Allied forces, when you leave, we all face the same sort of, challenges. And fusion back into being a proper civilian as such is one of those. And I think the reserve forces for me definitely have helped with that fusion. So for 3 years I trained as an actor, then got spat out of there. Very lucky, working in plays, doing national tours. I performed in Toronto, which is incredible as well, like on a tour with a play. And then we had COVID hit. So the career sort of like springboard was dampened ever so slightly for us all, I think, when COVID came in. But I've been lucky enough to crack on, keep getting jobs, keep working, keep acting. And, I feel we're, lights at the end of the tunnel. I have got fingers and pies, and there's a few ongoing plays I'm doing, or researching R&D for it. And I have a few filming things coming up, which hopefully I'll be able to sort of table with the people here, because one of the things that we're still shooting at the minute. We should be getting into post in about, that's why I'm looking like this grizzle. This isn't my preference at the minute. Is a Sunray series, which it's been put together by a bunch of former Royal Marines, both the creators and the DPs, the behind the camera and also the front of camera. The main sort of the focal point of the team as such are all former Royal Marines that are actors, but everything else included bonded on the cast as well, extremely diverse, inclusive, but the story is quite magical. But it's a story that rests completely with people that have been deployed in operations and their experiences and that fusion back into being semi-normal people again. So it's, keep your eyes out for that Darwin's Sunray series.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. I hadn't actually heard of it until I saw a random post on Instagram, and I was like, "Well, that looks cool." And then I saw you through it. I'm like, "Oh man, that looks cool. I should call this guy." And,
thank you very much.
Yeah, it just, one of the things I always say is that the population needs to see the cost war has. And the best way we could do that right now is we have the medium. We have TV, we have cinema, we have all these things, right? Beforehand, the prior generations, they never had that. And then on top of that, we have a communication network that spans the globe. Like, literally, we're on the other side of the world, and we're chatting as if we're sitting in the same room. Yeah. This is one of the benefits we have as a veteran community, especially the allied community, that have all chewed the same dirt. I mean, I was talking to the Panchway podcast guys who were Americans that were in the same AO that I was in 4 years after I had left. And like, they were like, "Oh yeah, you remember that place?" I'm like, yeah. I remember that place. I was, but it's just great. And when you mentioned going back to school, I had a very similar aspect. I think I was 34, 35, something like that. And I was in a room full of 19-year-old girls. And it was challenging because I was Master Burles, right? I was an instructor. My knife hand was just, but it takes a lot to be able to step back and go, their problems are their problems, and they are problems to them, right? They've never experienced. I was talking with a buddy of mine about. I just did a roundtable with a bunch of guys, and one of them was like, "We can't compare trauma because not only does the human brain differ, but the level of training change, right? Like, you going through training evolution to get ready for a deployment is going to be different than the training evolutions that I have to go through. And because your job is going to be different than mine. And if we were to switch roles all of a sudden and have to manage those situations, the problems that you would be able to get through without really thinking about them, I would struggle with, and vice versa, because we have different training.
Oh yeah, completely. But I think in service life and operations, it's got that full spectrum, the same as society has in a way. Isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and that's why our military is divided up into trades, right? So this guy can do this job to a very good or very extreme level, and that guy can do that job to his extreme level, and et cetera, et cetera. So you transitioned out, but not out. You went into the reserve. Now you're so. That was my other point. I just remember. Thank you. I try to mention this whenever somebody says this, but when you leave the military, you'll never be a civilian again. And we use this terminology like, we're going back to civvy life, but we're not, right? We're veterans now. And
oh no, completely. For me, that is, but I find it through experience as well. It's not getting as close to fusion. There's something that will never. I'm so chuffed that I am a veteran, or a pseudo veteran, but I am, and I soon will be. I mean, my contract with the military finishes caput complete next year, so that's me. I'll be 55 years old. Time done. 36, 37 years in the Corps then, and that's the biggest chunk of my life. So the fact is, I will always be. I've even kept my blues so that when it does come to my time to getting in that box, I'll be wearing my blues in the box. You know what I mean?
Nice.
So it's the way it is. That's who I am. And being an Irishman, that career path I chose was pretty let's say it wasn't a well-trodden path when I did join the Marines, but it's something that I needed to do, and it was in my formative years, and that has made me, well, it's a massive part of what or who I am. So
absolutely.
And I actually, exactly, even when you said we will never be real civilians as such, you have that little song going, I am so chuffed to be a veteran because I've had those experiences and I've been trained in that way, and I've had those friendships which are completely enduring, and the things that you've been through together. And I can't say, because I'm not fully there yet as a civilian, but I can't say that, oh yeah, you will never see that in civilian life. Of course you do. You see it a different way, but your experiences in my experience in the services, everyone's got unique experiences, but I would never ever have been faced with the challenges I had if I never made that call and went, I'm going to do this. And that gives me that little grin and going, so whatever I've got out there, whatever comes ahead, really, we've been in different places and scenarios where, one, I'm not getting shot at. Two, nobody's trying to blow me up. Three, I'm not living in somewhat used to be somebody's sewerage trench. I'm going, I think things will be different challenges, but less demanding on my existence, I think.
Absolutely. There's a mentality to be able to settle down into life after war, and finding peace after war is definitely a challenge for a lot of us. I talk to lots of guys, and it's a struggle across the board. I mean, when you leave something that is so formative as the military, because it's similar to childhood. I mean, you think about it, you go through basic training and all your stuff, but at the beginning you get taught how to walk, how to stand, how to fold your clothes, how to brush your teeth, how to tie your boots, right? Everything. So it's very much like childhood, learning how to be a person again, and then to do it again on a third time when you get out is a whole nother ball of wax. It's super fun. So if you got your transition coming up, you said next year?
To be honest, I'm fully in the middle of transition because of life as a reservist as such. With COVID now, it's been pretty quiet. My last deployment really was just as COVID broke in the UK. I was deployed in Norway with about 60, 70 guys, taking them for their first winter training. And I was running the course, and we're up a mountain, and we got a message saying, you've got to have to come off the hill, out of the field, because you have to get out of Norway tomorrow. Why? Oh, it's COVID. I said, well, no, we're all right. Nobody's near us here. We're up the mountain. And they went, no, we've got to be out of Norway tomorrow. So it was literally the whole of the Commando brigade loading on ships, flying out, all sorts, just to get everyone, back. And that was really, since then, it's been very, very quiet, and that's it. Unless it's operational output, it's been, training-wise, it's been negligible, really.
So when you decide, when you actually are out and you are no longer serving, what's the plan outside of acting? Do you have anything else, or are you just going to dive into that head first?
That's it. That is my... I am now, and that is my full-time job now. So I do that. I've got a few fingers in other pies, just running training, helping with... I recently, again, because few and far, acting work is so... It's a very, very tough industry, extremely tough industry. And apparently it's the most overpopulated industry in the world. But you are who you are. You've got a certain look. You've got a certain person that's going to be either employed or not employed. You've got to build up an extremely sort of thick rhino type skin, so that when you get those failures of that, I'm sorry, we don't, it's not for you. Why is it for him? Why is it? No. But I have to admit, because in the military, if you focus, and even though as in any sort of service life, there'll be obstacles thrown in left, right, and centre. You'll always have to try. But if you want to focus and you want to do something, it's achievable and it's doable. And if you give 100% of work and focus, you will achieve. In my industry now, you give 100%, you focus on everything else, you may not get it. You move on to something else. And that's why I've changed my sort of like my own MO, the way I operate to, this is it, effort, focus, obviously refusal, move away, looking on the horizon, where's the next target, move on. And it's even when I do an audition or a casting, it's done, it's behind me, forget about it, move on to the next one. If it comes back, tickety boo, result. I've won, but most of the time it doesn't. So for me, it's helped in loads and loads of ways just to move forward.
That's it's a great point. The thing that we wanted to talk about today anyway is creativity as a whole. And what I found really interesting was the fact that what you're describing is what the military teaches us: adapt and overcome. Right? Yeah. If you hit a wall, go around it. If there's something there, go the other way. If you need to go down, you go dig under. You got to go over. You got to blow the wall down. Whatever. Like, just where you need to be is over there. So figure it out. Like, give her.
Oh no! Like I say, the military toolbox, because this is tools. The military toolbox, what it gives you, just simple things. You say like you're taught or conditioned in a way to be a service person. And from all Western forces, you taught everything, how to walk, how to, when you march, how to walk, how to, everything like we went through. But all those things really, they add another feather to your bow as an actor. But simple things like you've got to be there, right time, right place, and be the right person. And I'm going, oh, isn't that strange in the military? And this came to when I did have my epiphany, right, I've got to do something else than being a Royal Marines Commando. Strangely, at that point in time, I was in a Commando unit. I was a captain then. I was sitting in front of a computer screen. I realised this isn't what I joined up to do. But all my kids at this stage had grown up. I was in the same Commando unit as my son, so I thought, and I had my reading glasses on. I thought, could you imagine calling a fire mission in when I'm going, right, hold on, fire mission, that's great. So I thought maybe there's a chance that I should be doing something else. So I thought, right, let's educate myself. So I went to a local university. And because I'm a Marine, a service person, as we all are, we're all storytellers. It's all about, we call it in the Marines dits. It's all about the dits. If you've got a good dit, you've got a good story, pull up a sandbag. When you tell a story, spin a dit, we call it. Comes back from the old naval traditions. So storytelling, let's do creative writing. I'm an Irish man as well. We're full of storytellers. So I went to university and looked at creative writing. But beside that, in the creative arts, there was acting. And I mapped across all the things that we do in the armed forces, even the terminology. So when you go to theatre, you go to theatre operations. It's a theatre. You're on stage. Your performance is always measured. At some stage, you're measured in the armed forces. Your performance, all about your performance. Performance, you perform all the time. Then there's rehearsal. You rehearse. Operations, you rehearse. And again, no plan survives contact, so you've got to be able to be dynamic, move back, change it, what you have to do. Exactly the same as being an actor. So I thought, right, this is more like, so it's storytelling. So I'm on stage, and then it's me telling the story. But it's using all those principles that I've been taught and I've learned and the tools I've got from being in the military. Time, place, uniform, what do I wear? Am I in dress blues today? I'm in combat gear, what am I on? So, you know what I mean? So you change, we are all actors, I think. And in the military, even if you're if you're just a private soldier or Marine and you move to the next level, you have to stand there and give your first lecture or presentation. And I've seen guys that are completely out of the comfort zone. They're going, hold on a second, I'm here to, be a grunt on the ground. But when it comes to it, they learn these new things. They get this other confidence. They become instructors. They get command. They become leaders, and they move forward. And I think at that stage, then you're an actor all the time. And people say to me, "Have you ever?" When I was starting training, they said, "Have you ever acted before or anything like that?" And I go, "Well, within the military, we have a thing called SODS operas, Ships Operatic and Dramatic Society. So it's like a skit they call in the army. So all the guys, you're deployed somewhere on a range, all the lads make a show, and basically it's taking the mick or taking the piss out of all the command and the officers and that. Always great. I thought that's the only level of what you would consider acting to be done. But then I thought about when you're on operations and you're in command in charge of guys, before you go out that door, before you go off that tailgate, before you move on, they're looking at you. And you're in the same, you know you're going into the same environment. You know that potentially you're in a life and death situation and very shortly, but they look at you. And no matter what nerves you've got or anything, you're going, no, we'll be okay. We'll be okay. And even inside you're going, Jesus! But you're going, no, we'll be okay. And you lead it and they look at you. So you're acting, or you go to Afghanistan, you're doing a shuri with a local guy in a village. And you're there, you're going, there's no malice, there's no hatred, but you want to get a message across. And you'll look him in the eye, even though you're speaking, the Turk will be on the side, but you're speaking, you look at him in the eye, and you want to give him a message. And you've got, you've got nothing against this guy whatsoever else, but that message might be one of friendship or a thing like that, but sometimes it might have to be an element of it where you have to give him a look where he knows that message you're giving is, but you're acting it because you're going, I've got nothing against this, I'm here to do a mission. It's the same as I'm on stage. I'm here to do a mission. The difference being, like I said earlier on, is that you're not being shot at. You're not in a threat. You're, in a way, you could be lying, when you're on stage. But when you're on operations, that's probably the most realistic, credible acting you'll do, because people will suss you out straight away if you're not doing, what you're supposed to be doing. And everyone say, well, you can't measure it as acting. It's just nature. I said, it is nature, but that just shows you that people are human beings. Even animals to a certain extent, they act, they perform, they be discreet, they do things. So to me, it's so part of the human being that acting is important. And it's more so now I've seen it, how veterans, one, they're extremely talented, unbelievably talented, they're extremely worldly wise and experienced. And they're great storytellers. So even more so, because they've been a whole part of that, that's why the creative arts is it's not a perfect match, but it's something that we will always perform well in. And that's whether it be front of stage, back of stage, front of camera, back of camera. We've got all those skills in the toolbox that we can bring to it and optimize whatever we do. And it also, I've seen more, which goes on to a few things that we're doing. Like I've done a few workshops with some of our veterans that were struggling with what they've been through, either it be PTSD or what, whether they've been tagged by that. And some of them were having so much trauma outside of the bubble, but when they were in that bubble, in the space, and they had the opportunity to pretend to be somebody else, it transformed them and they became alive, and they were able to communicate some more effectively because, they were able to do it through the arts and through being creative in a space. And then when they left there, if they take something away from it that is positive, I'm going, it's done. So there's so much benefits I think veterans can get from the creative arts. Whether that's, look at that the picture behind your wall, whether it's creating something like that, whether it's, making T-shirts, whether it's being a tattoo artist, whether it's, acting, whether it's singing, whether it's playing music, guitars, all those magical things, which it's all part of life. Even look at COVID. COVID, what has everyone done? They've watched Netflix, and that's a global thing. Everyone's done Netflix. Everyone's done, everyone listens to music. So the people have been, they're wanting and they're getting fed arts all the time, creative arts, and it's our favorite pastimes. Apart from obviously having a beer or two, probably, but everything is those feeds, is what being reading books, writing. Think of the stories that veterans are able to sort of like put pen to paper, accessibility through computers now, even handwriting, just get it out there, create it, do things. And it's to me, it's just a wonderful world after my service life. It's like there's such a spectrum of magic that can be done, and it's all about focus, diligence, and a bit of work, and just going, I can do this.
Yeah. The confidence piece you said at the beginning is critical, right? But we have a saying here: "Fake it till you make it," right? And that's
exactly
that you just gotta. And I remember at one point I was actually we were overseas, and I had an infantry captain look at me, and I was a private sapper at the time. And I know my job pretty well, but he goes, "Can you clear that building?" And I was like, "Yep." And off I went. And I grabbed my fire team partner and went to it. And in my head, I was like, oh, fuck. Right? But if I was told early on that if you project the confidence for that person, then they will be confident in you. If I had looked at that captain and been like, I mean, maybe, sure, he's not going to trust me. He's going to want that cleared again. He's going to want to make sure that it's like 100%. I can still do the job. I can still clear that building. Not a big deal, but it's in the confidence in what you actually portray is what gives you, and that you're 100% right. You are acting. You are straight up going against what your insides are telling you, even though you know 100% how to do it.
But even with that, Chance, because you think about it, even with that, the fundamentals you've learned and been taught, remember, we're drilled with it, aren't we? It's drilled. Mm-hmm. So there's simple things that are drilled, and there's a certain level of mimicry as well, but there's certain level of things that are drilled so that when it does, maybe if things just go a bit skew-if, you're able to react to it because there's certain things you don't have to think about, like where your weapon is, what you're doing, this sort of thing. These are all things that we're conditioned to that level. So any new skill, certain level of mimicry, but you're going, yeah, I can do that. But the fundamentals, you, yourself, your number two, your oppo, all those are, they're pretty flawless, whether you're a sapper, whether you're, a Marine Commando or anything. I mean, there's certain, you know what I mean? And there's also that fear of death or passion for life that, you're going to, so there's, everything up, but it's all about that. It's the look in the eye, the confidence of going, right. Yeah. And you will do it. You'll always.
It really is the neat thing. I was talking to a buddy of mine about mindfulness on a previous podcast, and I had always likened mindfulness to being overseas because it is a hyper focus, right? You are focused on the job 100% of the time. And he rightly brought up, and he was like, mindfulness has to do with your emotions, though. And I imagine being overseas, you strip your emotions. And I was like, yeah, 100%. Like I would remove my emotional state completely and just focus on the job. And just understanding that, the separation of when I removed my emotions versus when I actually utilized them and be in a mindful state, that's where I get my best writing. That's where I get my best points for when I start doing podcasting, when I'm attuned to the moment. And I would imagine it's the same on stage. And I mean, thinking about it, we get staged, right? If you, from one point to another, you got a stage for an operation, you got to go from here to here.
Yeah.
A lot of the terminology is exactly the same. So it's surprising that it's not a more utilized analogy to bring theater into the military. That's quite interesting. You
know what you said with the mindfulness there as well, Chance? What I struggled with while I was in active training was we build up a resistance to so many emotional things in the military, and is like a wall there. It's like you have to be in operations because you face traumatic, experiences, and they're in your TV screen looking forward. You'll see these things that will change your life, but you have to overcome them. You have to move on. Life or death, you have to move on. And like, you said, when you focus on a completely different thing when you're on operations, but you build up this resistance that is to that emotional front. And I never seen this completely until I was at acting school. And at acting school, you're acting, aren't you? So it's all in a way make believe, but it's not, because you're storytelling. It's got to be believable and credible. So if I'm doing an emotional role, I was just all of a sudden hitting the blocks and going, my lecturers were saying, well, yeah, you just tap into your own experiences and, where you can feed those emotions. And I was going, but that wall was solid. And I said, I can't go there because that is things that I love, people I love, or I've loved, who are no longer with us, who I've, been part of me, been part of my existence, and they've been my brothers in arms on the front line, and they're no longer with me. How can I tap into that memory to gain an emotion so that you believe me when I'm telling a completely different story? And this was a real moral challenge for me for quite a while. And I then sort of looked at it and going, right, what am I doing? Why am I an actor? And I said, I'm an actor because I can do this. I'm here. I can do this. So it's got to be, I'm here, and it's for them. It's for all those guys that didn't make it back or are struggling as they are back. So I'm an actor purely for them. So even when I get an opportunity, or people are interviewing me or anything, I say, well, why are you an actor? I say, well, I'm doing this because of all those people that haven't got the opportunity I've got, and for them that are struggling with it. So they listen to me and go, look, there is a way. There's a way to do things. There's a way to move forward. There's positivity. There's live for the now. But now every time I have to go to an emotional story, I do tap into those memories and not consider myself to be somebody who's suffering from PTSD. I'm a human being, and I've got emotional memory from some incredible people that I can, that I do tap, and I chat with them and go, I need you here, guys. Can you come and visit me? And they do come, and that credibly, but that is them. That is, I'm able to gain those emotions that are really, really quite sad in a lot of ways, but I can do it because I keep sort of measuring it. Have you seen the film Stardust, where they're all dead and they're all like black and white sort of film things, and they sort of sit in the background? I've got this like big sort of gang of Marines up there giving it, right? So it's all right. You can be shot at from 30 feet away, but you can't do a bit of sort of like, I'm a bit emotional, for us, could you? You know what I mean? And going, all right, lads, I can do this. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I will. You know what I mean? This is it. So everything I do it helps me and it helps them to achieve it. And for the credibility of the story, I tap into all those friends. So if somebody says to me, why are you an actor? I said, it's because of them that I can act and incredibly act, hopefully.
Yeah. That's the drive to create, right? When I dealing with PTSD and trying to manage my own trauma and trying to deal with getting into advocacy and doing all that kind of stuff, was every time I had a shitty day, every time I had a really bad period of time, and I'd feel sorry for myself, like, oh God, why do I gotta go through this and the bullshit, blah blah blah. And I'm like, but no. I'm here for them. Yeah, 100%, right? And that is the drive to create, and that is the reason why I keep helping out buddies when people call me or message me in the middle of the night and they're like, man, I'm not doing well, and you're like, yeah, cool, all right, let's chat. It's that continual drive because we have them. And I mean, the challenge also for military people is that wall that we build up becomes a dam, right? And all the emotions start to fill up, and you add a little bit more, and then the emotions go add a little bit more. And the real challenge I had was figuring out how to use the floodgates, right? Yeah. How to pull some, let the water come down a bit, and then keep working that way. It's a real challenge. It didn't really come into play until I was finding my medium, finding how I related to the world in the best way. And I found, podcasting is really great because I like chatting, I like talking with people, I like learning new things. And so when you found your medium, was it the stage that drew you, or was it film, or what? Like, how did you find that lane that worked for you?
The lane for me was storytelling. So it's telling a story as an actor. So I think fundamentally that's stage work. And when you're training, it focuses on training. There is modules that we deal with acting for film. But with acting for film, the two disciplines, let's say acting for theatre and acting for camera, are so polar. It's quite unbelievable. They're like at either end. So I always see it as and I got a module on this actually, the relationship between an actor and a director in stage. And it's very, very, it's fundamental to both film work and to stage work. But in stage, it's an actor's medium, and it's a human medium because it's energy. So when you're performing, there's no matter if you close your eyes and you're on stage and you can see nobody in front of you in the audience, you just need to close your eyes and just feel that energy. You feel, and that's humans. That's what humans do. That's that animal instinct that possibly we've evolved out of, but it's still there. When you're in close proximity to something, there's like electricity. It's like a currency, and that's energy. But with when you're rehearsing for the play, you work on it, you'll focus on the play, you'll do everything. The director will be giving you notes to go, right, try it this way, try it this way. But you get it, and then you perfect it, you rind it, you got the story where it is, and it's believable, and then you get on stage. But once you step on that stage, you own it. So you could turn around and say completely different words, you could do whatever you want, but you own it. Nobody's going to do anything because it's that there. And it's also a snapshot. It's not recorded. It's never going to be seen again. So every time you do that performance, it's just that for those moments with those people, it's a bond and a relationship just for that time. Whereas with camera, working a film with camera, that's completely the director's medium and the DOP. So as soon as you get there, you'll go, right, yeah, can we just reset that? Can you just do that one again, do it again. And you think when you're on stage, you've got a journey, you can hit those emotional marks because your body's conditioned and your muscle memory's there. When it gets to the film, you get that mega 2 point, you're like, right. And you think, and he goes, yeah, can we reset that one? Could you? And then you just have to put yourself back and go, right, where was I? And then lean into it again. And then once it is, and he goes, and the director's happy with it, therefore it's in the can, then it's also going to be seen forever and ever and ever. And you'll look at it and go, no, but you can't do anything about it because you don't own it. So that's why, for me, two different disciplines, love both of them, but it's your demand on you as an actor is very, very different.
Do you find it challenging to continually reset, especially for, say, emotional scenes or something that is more draining? Because, I mean, so I always thought of myself as a bit of a homebody, right? And because I have a very low social battery, I love talking to people. I love being able to chat and, one-on-one connections. But when I'm in a group of people, I like no, can't do this for long. I can 5-10 minutes and then I got to do something else. So I always thought of myself as a bit of a homebody because I never wanted to do all that group stuff until COVID hit. And then I recognized that, like, my wife told me one day, she was like, you're a bit of a social butterfly. I was like, what? Since when? I've never been a social butterfly. What are you talking about? But thinking about it, every time we had a barbecue, every time I'd meet another veteran, I would immediately just stop and we would start talking. Yeah. And we would go for 30, 40 minutes, and my wife would just be sitting there like, fuck, we got stuff to do. And so when I started working with when COVID happened, I couldn't talk to anybody. I'd be sitting at home and I have this battery full of friggin' social energy, and I just want to do stuff, and I want to be able to talk to people and go things, and I couldn't. Everything was closed, and I had the podcast, and this was my outlet, and I had to develop my voice. I had to develop how to project what I want to project, right? I have to
not only, didn't you?
It is, and you also have to figure out, delays and timing and how to manage this and so on and so forth. And it really became it was, as we were saying earlier, right? You do one podcast and you listen to it and you're like, fuck, that was not glad good.
You get it as well.
Yeah. And then, try and post-production, fix whatever you can. And then sometimes you hit it and the two, me and my guest, we nail it and we have this great conversation and it's awesome and it's good. But developing the voice, developing my voice to be able to project what I wanted to get was how I created a much more fluid interaction. Because my first, 10, 15 podcasts, while being good, do not sound the same as they do now, right? Because now I have I'm much more used to it. I'm much more open.
You own it as well.
Yeah, and so I was going to ask, like, where did you not only learn to develop your voice, but how did you find that into acting? Because you say you're a storyteller, and we all, Army guys put our helmets on, we start telling war stories, and that's we all do it, right?
Yeah.
But do you think that was did you learn that as a kid to be a storyteller, or was it through the Marines, or was it through the acting? Like, where do you think you learned to develop your voice like that?
Well, I think I'm an Irishman, so we are incredible storytellers. Anyway, I grew up on being told stories and, historical ones and just what life's all about, really. I mean, and there's also magical things and make believe and imagination and all really important things in Ireland. So, and then you join the Corps or the Royal Marines, and I think we exist on the stories. I mean, you also, even some of the, the guys and my mentors and the people I looked up to when I sort of was a young Marine growing up in the Corps, they to me are legends. They were like, gods, some of them, in the Falklands, and the stories from war, but also just the funny stories, the drunken stories, and that's it. It was just to see. It was like, you can see the tradition comes from like old naval times and everything. That's all about storytelling, and I just was fascinated and love that storytelling sort of like implement. So I don't think it develops my voice. And remember when I joined up, I hope my accent's okay with you guys now, but when I joined up, I had a thick Belfast accent, so I was talking like this, and nobody really knew what I was on about. So apparently we talk dead fast when we come from Ireland, So it's one of those, I had to sort of temper it just so I could communicate effectively. But after that, I mean, I think that's helped me massively as an actor. But during actor training, they take another step up, and this is more on the sort of technical function of your voice, what it does, your phones, how you sort of sit back so you don't put stress on your voice, how it comes from internally. It's a bit like a PTI. Your PTIs with your physical trainers sort of talk like that. That's why PTIs stop, because it doesn't damage the voice. You think if you're doing a play and it's a long-term play and there's a lot of dialogue in it, if everything sits in your throat, it'll go hoarse. So you do have to, and I get quite excited, and it all comes up here, and you have to bring it back down again and get it back on your chest, and from where it comes from, your diaphragm. And I enjoy that, because that's all new skills. I mean, this is the best one. When we were doing, you've got a belt, when you sing, you got a belt, and your vocal phones can't really suffer that for too long. Mm-hmm. So our voice coach, an incredible guy, he just went right, just pretend you're like running a section attack, and so I would do the old right move, the different ways. He goes, I bet you went, when you're giving that, move left, right, move up 40 Mike, all the bang, bang, bang. And he goes, try bringing it back there. And I learned things that would really help me when you're in a section attack, bring your voice back. It's deeper, it'll carry further. That'll happen. You'll not damage your things so you can do it more enduringly. And I thought, well, that would have been quite helpful if I didn't know that. But in the time, especially when it's life or death, it's, but train yourself, discipline it, and then all of a sudden it naturally becomes and comes from where you want it to come from.
Yeah, that's a great point. I actually, when I was an instructor, I had this. I was training a group of officers, and these guys were phase 2, like brand new. They had just finished basic. They're just learning the Army portion, right? And they call their own drill. So when we moved from like the classroom to the mess hall or whatever, they call their own drill, and I just marched along beside them. And one time it still bothers me just thinking of the story, but the section commander or the section senior, whatever, or the troop leader was like, attention, left turn. And I was like, what do you think that was? And it bothered me so much because I've been a big fan of drill since I started. I really love drill. I love how precise it is, and like it shows how much a person gives a shit in an instant. And when I got to my regiment, when we have new officers show up, they get paraded in front of the regiment, and they come up and they replace the warrant, and the warrant steps off, and that's your first interaction with that guy. So as a private or corporal, you're staring at this new lieutenant who's showing up, and his drill is sloppy. You're like, fuck that guy, right? Just immediately. But if it's crisp and it's solid, you're like, yeah, right. This guy's got something. And so I took these troops, and I was not happy about their drill. And I'm like, you know what? We're going to do extra training later tonight. So we marched off to class and carried on, so on and so forth. And I brought them all out. at the end of training, and I'm like, okay, now we're going to work on command presence training. Every single one of you is going to learn how to call drill, because what I saw today was not okay. And I made them, I lined them all up on one side. I took the section senior, I posted them at one side of the drill square, and I said, march them over there. And he marched them all the way to the other side. And so you're yelling at the other side of the parade square. The guy was screaming his head off, trying to get him to do something.
Chance, it's active training. It's active training. So you said presence, command presence. You are the one who's doing the drill. You are calling time. You know, you've got to be, it's there. So you're in command. Going, you are in command. Doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter anything. You're in the lead. You're in the lead. So be it. We've got a saying, which I do like to say all them. You know, you've got little taglines. The thing for me is, you spit, you don't dribble. If you're going to do something, you spit the fucker out. You're dribbling like left. You spit. You don't dribble. Spit, don't dribble. Just works the trade, doesn't it?
Yeah, shit or get off the pot, right?
Yeah,
like just freaking do it or don't.
Yeah.
But I mean, that leads into one of the points that I was going to say later was the concept of AARs, right? This is how we learn the military, right? You do an operation, you come back, everyone does an after action report. Okay, this is what I did, this is when it happened, blah, blah, blah. This is the points that I think need to change, etc. And I didn't take this into my life very early on, but I realized that I did it in the Army all the time. Was I would do something like that command presence training, and I would get the kids to wander around, and they would scream, and then I would sit them down and be like, okay, boys, like, look, this is what is going on. This is what you need to do. Any questions? And people would ask, and they would, we would fix it, and the next day we'd be able to get better. And then I found that I was doing it myself afterwards. Was I would sit down and go, okay, well, how could I have, did they get the point right away? Yeah. Could I have done better? Could I have made this? And in civilian life, or in veteran life, I should say, I still catch myself with that. In veteran life, you still have to keep doing that. And I try to do it after every show, especially when I'm doing post-production, right? And I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, I didn't really like that, but whatever, it's done. Cool, I can learn from it, right? And move on. Do you still maintain personal AARs? Do you still do them regularly after shows,
completely.
After everything?
Yeah, I mean, that is I think it's an unconscious important tool, because I don't consciously go, right, I have to now sit down and think, no, you don't. I walk away from an audition, and if I walk away going, right, as soon as I walk out the door, I'll be going, right, how'd that go? Right, what over there? Right, there was a hit there. Should have done this, should have done that. I feel, and again, I have to measure myself doing that. Give myself, every time I do something, just give myself a smallie after action report. Just go, right, what do we do there? Right. And especially when you're doing stage work, remember that energy is different. Because sometimes you give a performance that you think is immaculate, but the energy, because it's human beings, the energy is different. And the night before you get a standing ovation. This night, it's dormant. You get like a golf club, but you're like, going, hold on, we're on point there. We're doing well, but it's all to do with human energy. So after everything I do, I just go, right, stop there and do it. And I don't, it's not a conscious thing. It's going, right, I just do it. And I think it's got to be part of the military conditioning. Going, right, let's just sit back here, do it. You know, where would it be at? And then when you've been in command as well, you pull in your subunit leaders, you pull them in and just give the old, all that was just standard. It was an SOP. Whereas for me, because I'm an individual operator now, I'm an actor. So I'll work in companies, you know, in a theater or in, you know, film companies, you know, as part on set and people on set. But for me, it's still, I'm bringing myself to the party. So the person that I need to debrief is me. You know what I mean? So when I do finish, every time, most noticeably, they're thinking now, it's after I do a casting or an audition. If I leave there and I've got a grin on my face, there's always something that's go right. And it's not perfection, because even though we strive, or in a way, it's a false economy of perfection, but obviously pushing forward to do your best, that to me is exactly what it is. And those little mini after action reports, especially post audition, they do help me. And especially if it lands on, and the next time I do it, I proactively think from what I've learned from before. And then it becomes part of your system then, doesn't it? So then you don't have to think anymore. It's a drill now. So like you said, no, you're doing your podcast, started off here, incrementally, you're moving forward. You can see yourself optimized and you're going, and again, you're starting to get ownership now as well. So I'm like, that's what I want to be, in my new career, is just to go, right, I know I'm going to go here and deliver it this way. And if I don't, then I know that you need to address it. You lost your focus or something. That sort of thing.
Yeah. I had a podcast where I was actually in the middle of a depressive episode, and I thought, I'm doing pretty good. I could probably make it through this, and it might be good training for me to, see how I react and so on and so forth. And I, as soon as the conversation started, my mask went up. The one I deal with civilians for when I'm not in a good mood, and you're just like, oh yeah, blah, blah, and the projection was just off. And I was looking at it afterwards, and I was like, it doesn't, like, in my first pass of it, I was like, it's the guest, right? The guest isn't answering the questions I want the way I want it to, or maybe, he seems tight, and I wasn't able to get him out of his shell. And then my wife came by, and it was like, that's not you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, and like my shift immediately, or my focus went back to me, and I started looking at it, and I was like, I'm not comfortable. I'm not sitting relaxed. I'm not able to, I'm a hand talker. So, and you start to see the cues, and then you start to go, oh, so it was me. And then I start going back and forth. I'm like, he's not answering the question because I'm not really asking a question. I'm just stating something into the air and then hoping that he'll catch it. And it went poorly from there. And I actually messaged the guy afterwards, and I was like, man, I'm really sorry. That was all my bad. Yeah. We'll set up another one. We'll get another, and we haven't got there yet, but we're going to get him back on here. And that's the challenge with anything in terms of personal interaction, right? Is if that energy is not there, if you're not prepared, if you're not feeling like you should be there.
Yeah.
But you either have to reckon.
But Chance, you said though, you do have days, and when just before we invaded Iraq, I sit down, and my OC at the time, Jason, he's a lovely guy, an incredible person, incredible Royal Marine as well, officer, and he sat down, and you could just see he wasn't, he's normally a massive, buoyant, he's full of like energy and everything, and for me it was just, when you learn something, I thought, well, I was thinking, but he said, do you ever get those days where absolutely nothing will make it better? There's nothing, I said, but you don't have days like this? He said, I'm having one today. And I went, yeah, you are, aren't you? And he goes, and I thought, was that not just maybe the way life is? You get the highs, you get the lows, but it's also when at that stage, we'd been on operations, I'd done things, but I hadn't hit the trauma. Unfortunately, he died on a helicopter as we were flying into Iraq, and I always go back to that time, sit down chatting to him. And he was such a, it's so much energy just to see him in that way. And for me, it was a realization that people do have days where, whether it's chemically inside the body or whether it's just something that triggers something in their head, that they're less, thinking out. As an actor, you've obviously got to completely get rid of that. You've obviously got to be on point all the time because that does affect it. Mm-hmm. But we're human beings, so you think about when you add the levels of PTSD that I've seen with my friends and colleagues, and that those highs and lows become extreme. And it's instead of keeping that mediocre dips and lulls and highs, it's that whoosh, and then the troughs are terrible, and you can see that transformation. And it's always at those moments, I always think it's so important for them to tap in, or for you to identify it and have a quiet, just a friendly, not a patronizing word or anything, just a little, I know where you are, mate. I know where you are, and that's you think out there. And what can we do whether it be a cup of coffee, a bit of banter, a bit of crack, maybe a yomp, or we call it a walk across the moors, a yomp across the moors. You know what I mean? Something like that just goes, gives that bit of freedom and gets some other chemicals moving a different way to make it that much better. Inside there it mightn't, but it'll just get those chemicals moving. It helps you, better.
Yeah, I learned quite a bit about trauma when I when I got out. I really didn't know anything about trauma at all, and I started seeing a psychologist, and I saw him for about a year, and I just got worse and worse and worse and worse, and I was like, what the fuck? And I didn't realize that I could just go see anybody. I was still in the army set of mind, like, the army sent me here.
Yeah.
Fix me, right? That's what my thought process was. And then I eventually found the psychologist that I'm still working with today. She's awesome. But she always challenged me. So when I would make a statement that was extreme, as you said, right? Like, all civilians are bullshit, right? Yeah. So like, are they really? Like, aren't you married to a civilian? I mean, technically I'm a civilian. Aren't we cool people? And I'd be like, well, I mean, I guess, yeah. And the moment you just bring that extreme down a little bit, and then that trough isn't quite as deep, and then you come back up and you don't go that far to the extreme, then that trough isn't as deep. And like you said, if you can catch it early enough and be like, hey man, let's go for a beer, let's go grab a coffee, let's go for a walk, whatever, right? Some guys, let's hit the gym, let's hit whatever, let's go to the range, let's anything. That's why I got this podcast started, was because I would talk to multiple people, and when someone was in a bad mood, they would have a different skill set or different tool that they would use to get them out of the bad mood, or to help, and that would help them. And then I was like, well, why aren't we telling this to everybody? Because when you get stuck in your own head, you're in a vacuum, right? There's no new information coming in, and you're just sitting there going like, nothing works. Fuck, nothing works. Why does nothing work today? And you have those bad days where nothing seems to work, right? I tried to make breakfast and I burnt the friggin' eggs, and and everything starts to go downhill. And if you have one dude who can, or one person to help you, to just say, let's go buy breakfast at Tim Hortons, whatever. Like, this doesn't matter.
I think as well, which the unfortunate thing, which I find with a lot of my friends as well, is that they're, due to the way they're being, when they come back from operations, that transformation in themselves, negative transformation, they lose out in relationships and family and things like that, and a lot of times they end up by themselves, and that really, I think, compounds everything so much, because of that isolation, and that we're lucky in a way, because I've got my family, and like I say, you've got people that you can. That's such a helpful thing to have somebody who's there just to bounce things off, and even just to go, what do you reckon? Why do I feel this way? Why is it? I mean, and it's always helpful. So I always keep a wary eye out on my friends that through whatever the relationships are broken up and they're moving into, accommodation by themselves. It's just to keep a little, especially nowadays, like you've got mobile phones, just a little like WhatsApp group or something like that. They're going, how's it going? Blah, 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 fancy linking up. And we have breakfast clubs as well. So we get all these honking, disgusting creatures that, and we get together and have a breakfast. And obviously we just, the banter and the abuse that's thrown out at each other is incredible. It's so invigorating. It's unbelievable. But we all have it, and we sort of regularly do, right, let's have a breakfast club. And we just put in, these are like veterans from, all colors, not just Royal Marines, like, different people. And we all gather, have breakfast, and it's just all the funnies that we still hold sacred, which nobody else really gets at all. Nobody else thinks, that's hilarious. Whereas we're really crying with laughter. I need that sometimes, and it's really nice to do. Right? We've got one coming up anyway, which is great. But it's the people that from that service environment, they diversify. They don't all go into health and safety. They don't all go into adventurous training. They don't do this. They all diversify. And some of the magical things that people are doing and creative things is mind blowing. And they also, that brings more into the pot as well. So that, we've got all that common ground in the banter, but you've got these people doing other magical things, and some of them being extremely successful at these gobsmacking, things. And you're going, So it's always good to see. And that is a healthy thing, because then guys that might be struggling might go, I can have a little test for that. Let's have a do, this, that. And then they've got somebody they can bounce off and bring them into and show them the, signpost and give them a pathway and, you know what I mean? Because it's all there. Everyone can do whatever they want. They've got to just spit, don't dribble.
Yep. 100%. That, I was talking to somebody here in Canada. We struggle with it because the nation is so big.
Yeah.
Right. And the guys that you serve with, they go basically the other side of the world. Right. Most of the guys I served with aren't in the area that I'm in anymore. Most of them are either on the East Coast or they're out in Ontario or they're West Coast, or it's multiple hours of flight just to get there, or we would be driving for multiple days just to get there. And we used to have, the Legion was such a big thing here for many, many years, but it has slowly started to fade away because we aren't local anymore. Yeah. Right. So the guys that I served with when I was an instructor, I was in Ontario. Most of those guys are out in Ontario still. That's a 3-day drive if I'm hauling ass. Yeah. That's 11, how many days? It was 35 hours of driving when I first went out there just to get there. So it took me 3 days. And I had a buddy of mine from Denmark ask me, he was like, what? And you're still in the same country? And I was like, yeah, that's only like 3/4 of the country too. That's not even the whole thing. There's more. So we struggle with it a lot, where guys, you leave the military and then you go back home to wherever that was and you are gone. You're on the other side of the world compared to most of the people that we're on base with. So it's a real challenge. And again, this is why the podcasting work. This is why it's great to see more veterans in film, more veterans in media creation, some sort of, they're creators. This is what I love about the creativity of it, is like, I've said over the last 10 or 15 years, that we've been seeing the beginning of a veteran renaissance. And it truly is. I mean, we have so many vets that have seen full of talent, right? Yeah. And now that we've done the physical test of war, and because as a kid you join the army and you're like, yeah, let's go get some, and you're all like hyped up to go after it, and then afterwards you're like, okay, well, that's checking the box, right? I've done it, now let's focus on something else. And it's a beautiful thing to see. We just need to get more people involved. And as you said, this is, one person does it, then 3 people do it, then 10 people do it, then 15, and then 20, and then it just expands.
I've got a chance. That does leave me on, because Canada to me is absolutely mind-blowingly beautiful, gobsmackingly big country. And we got brought out. I was doing a play called Soldier On in the UK, and it was the Roland Gossage Foundation, which is in Toronto, based in Toronto. He's seen the play in Roland and his team seen the play in London, and he said, we need to bring this to Canada. So they brought the play out, and we went out. Literally, it was 3 months to Christmas, just before Christmas, before COVID, and we performed in Toronto, and we had a Canadian veteran with us and Canadian actors who performed in Soldier On. I do believe that they're in negotiations for bringing the play out and performing with veterans, Canadian veterans, in Canada, and that will be. It's definitely something that the people, the gang in Canada that watch this podcast, if they get in touch with the Roland Gossage Foundation or Soldiers in the Arts, which is an organisation, and it's affiliated with the Legions, or the Canadian Legion as well, and it's that magic that I've seen over here with veterans and the talents that they've got, and also the want that they've got, and going, no, I fancy doing that. That's good. And also the benefits I've seen, they're going, no, that's recovery, that's helpful, that's a pathway, that's definitely a magical way to go and be creative, especially if you're looking at artwork and at acting. But it's definitely, if you little pointers for your people over there, it's definitely Soldiers in the Arts and the Roland Gossage Foundation. Both, Roland himself's an ex-cavalry, Canadian cavalry corporal. Mega character as well. Good bit of banter.
Like, we probably cavalry. I'm like, we have three technically, but trying to remember. So I used
to have the old amphibious vehicles. Is it the LAR?
Probably was he? He must have been a dragoon then. Because I was just thinking, if he's out east, he's a dragoon. Yeah, because out west we have the Strats, and these guys are main battle tankers. They don't do anything else. Yeah. Except for ride horses. They're the only guys that ride horses, but they only use main battle tanks. And
same as our cavalry.
Yeah.
Our cavalry are more like reconnaissance, light armored reconnaissance. So they're moving on. They're taking on a lot of brigade level type reconnaissance stuff. Our guys are.
That's our dragoons. So we have like the dragoons out east are all like recce guys, armored recce.
Yeah.
And then out west they're just tankers. That's all they do. And then we have the French regiment as well, and they do kind of both. So it's a little weird, but it's our military is a little weird. So we've been rolling for a little bit over an hour, and I can't thank you enough here, brother. It has been a fantastic chat. This has been some great pointers here, and I mean, there's going to be so much to pull from. Any last points? Anything we haven't covered yet?
No. It's like I say, be good chance just keep communication up, and hopefully, globally, veterans just look at the odds and just go, there's something there that we're such a talented gang that we can bring something to. So
yeah.
And for me, it's just Sunray series on YouTube. Go and have a look at it. Hopefully, be coming out when we get a platform after Easter. And for you guys in Canada, Soldiers in the Arts and the Roland Gossage Foundation, because they are incredibly supportive of veterans and very good for technically minded ones with the Roland Gossage technical foundation courses. But Soldiers in the Arts is I think it's definitely going to be going places, and there'll be stuff for Canada coming out this year.
Wicked. I'll make sure it's all in the show notes so that if anybody needs anything, they can just hit the links and I'll take them right there. If anybody wants to find more about you, how would they do that social media wise or website or whatever you got?
Tip Cullen. There's not many Tip Cullens in the world. So just Instagram, Facebook. I've got my website as well. I've got Tip Cullen at actor.com.
Right on. Something like that.
Actor.com.
I'm sure we could probably Google you and it might pop up. That would work too.
See this ugly head. But thanks very much, Chance. It's been lovely.
Oh, thank you, man. It has been absolutely awesome. That concludes this episode of The Toolbox. I really appreciate y'all listening. It has been my pleasure bringing you this awesome guest. If you like what you heard, please like, share, subscribe, and do all that awesome stuff. And I hope you can use some of the information that was offered. To all those putting on the line every day, first responders, military, veterans, civil servants, you guys are keeping us safe and keeping the country running. I really appreciate y'all. Hope to see you next time. Till then, stay open, stay humble, and stay focused. Shimo.